Welcome back to Lucore Automotive Services. Today I'm working on our little red S10 that I picked up last week. We got the intake manifold on it, and now it's time to make it run correctly because it doesn't sound quite right. This was a running before the intake manifold was done by the previous owner, well, two previous owners, and they allegedly removed the distributor and couldn't figure out how to get it back in time, which is why I got a really good deal on it. So I have trust issues, so we brought it back and we did an intake manifold gasket on it. The inside of the intake valley looked super clean, really nice. No signs of anything abnormal. Actually looked clean enough that the vehicle had clearly been well maintained. Let's fire it up and figure out what's wrong with it. That doesn't sound good. What'd you do, Richard? So the irony to this is I cut the oil filter open and I didn't find anything really bad. I mean, it was a Fram and it needed to go in the trash anyway, but I didn't find any bearing material in it. So is it a rod bearing? Is it a torque converter bolt? Is it something completely different that we've never seen before? I don't know. But we're going to check torque converter bolts first because it's a strange noise. It's probably a rod knocking, and I'll accept that probably in about 15 minutes. And I have a used engine that's actually from an 01. I actually bought that vehicle for the engine, knowing at some point I would come across one of these that would need one. I just wasn't expecting it to be this one. Let me get this thing in on the rack. We'll be right back. So angry. None of the valve springs looked broke when we had the covers off, although we weren't looking for that.
I kind of glanced at them. I didn't see any collapse ones.
Yeah, you can normally see it. Throwing a parts cannon at this thing, so clearly somebody's having problems with this thing. This was inside the car. I assume that's the one that came off of this car. I found this seal under the driver's seat, which is actually the seal for this hat, and if it's not installed it will cause all sorts of problems, but it has the seal in it, so that's an odd thing to find. If that seal's not in there, the mass airflow sensor will read incorrectly and it will cook the cat. This is a mass air off of the other 01 I have out back that I bought for the engine. We're going to switch it out just to see if it changes our mass airflow code. Because sometimes different mass airflows have different values, and if this was picked up at a junkyard and it's incorrect, it could be our problem. If there's debris on it, that could be part of our problem. So let's check some of the basic stuff first. Looks like a happy face. filthy. Let's check the air filter real quick. There is no air filter. That's a problem. We didn't see any mouse nests inside the intake, so I think that's what it was. We'll get an air filter for it. It's the one off the powder truck. Let's see what kind of changes that makes. Probably nothing. I need to get my vacuum gauge because I like to see what my vacuum's reading. Loud. What if this thing's ever had a crank sensor? Oh, that was me. There's a couple bulletins on these for crank position sensors and checking the reluctor wheel to be loose. I'm not feeling that. Crank sensors make these things go out of time, which it sounded like this thing did when I started it the last time. We'll go ahead and put a crank sensor in it. And we'll probably be putting an engine in it. I typically prefer Delphi parts, but this one we'll have to do because it was quick and easy to get. Made in Mexico. How about that? Let's put this back in. I put my belt back on. And it's looking like I've got a rod knock, but let's verify it. Super low torque on that bolt. A little rub mark on my sensor, which is not something I commonly see. The filter doesn't have any glitter in it, which is pretty interesting considering the amount of noise this engine is making. It's filthy, but it was a Fram, so, you know, it was probably left on there way too long. Thing's charging at 14 volts, and it's got 40 pounds of oil pressure at idle, which is why it's kind of weird that it's making the noise that it is. would be appropriate if an Ozzy Osbourne song would come on the radio right now. It looks like the oil cooler lines have been replaced on this. They look brand new. So it was probably run low on oil one too many times, and now that it's actually running again, it's getting ready to let some rods fly free. Whatever. Needs an engine. Pretty sure. Pretty sure. That's odd. We're gonna have to open it up and see what's going on with it. Well, I'm wondering if we have a lifter that rotated or something to that effect. It's probably a rod. Buggered it up. And I decided that I might have to take all this stuff off anyway. Let's go a little bit further because I'm curious, because this noise, while it sounds like a rod knock, it also does not sound like a rod knock. So I'm going to see if I can get these valve covers off and take a look, see if we can see something abnormal. I'm going to have to grab a couple different sockets. Well, I've got my valve covers off, and not seeing any broken valve springs, which is kind of what I was hoping to see. It does feel like we've got one injector pin that's off. We definitely had probably one injector not firing. That injector pin being off is a high has a high rate of technician installed problem. It's real easy to get those tangs off. I think oh no, I need to put my coil back on. See if we can make it run with the covers off. Mass airflow back on. We should be able to crank it over and see if it'll fire. Get all my tools off of here before they go hide out in the chassis with all my 10mm.
No protection.
Running it raw.
The more and more I do watch that, it does sound weird. It does sound less like a rod.
It doesn't sound like a rod. That branch that I got for nothing because it had a broken valve spring. Yeah, because that guy thought it needed an engine.
I don't want to say that's what this is.
But it's not. I mean, I'm not seeing anything wrong with the valve springs. It might be a lifter that went bad.
Yeah.
Because I'm not seeing debris in it, like in the filter or anything that makes me think it's...
And they didn't pull the cheap and put new oil in it so that it doesn't look bad. You mean to crank this thing?
Yeah, why don't you?
It does have a really weird sounding crank too.
Did you drop oil out of it to see if it?
I cut the filter that was on it before we got it open, and there was nothing bad in it.
All right, contact.
It's gonna make a huge mess. Yeah, I know. I'm reading oil pressure, but I'm not having oil come up through my push rods. That's awkward. Crank that over again for me. System problem, because even though I'm reading oil pressure, I'm not getting oil coming up through my push rods. So engine out it shall be. Questions answered.
Kind of. That sounds way more top end than bottom end.
Well, I mean, if a lifter's, well, all my push rods are moving, so it doesn't mean I don't have a lifter that's completely destroyed, but
yeah. But you would think you'd see evidence of that in the oil.
Well, if it was rod bearing, I would see that. I would have seen it in the oil filter, or in the body of the That's what was weird. It definitely had a pin on my one of the injectors. The injector all the way forward was bent sideways, so it's running better now because it's running on all six. Because it had one injector that wasn't firing correctly, which that's a real easy thing to do.
Well,
that answers that question.
Engine's still coming.
Engine's still coming.
You can use
the engine out of that black one that I bought specifically for the engine and transmission. All right,
well, say goodbye all the people. We'll wrap this video up.
So there you have it. Still going to be an engine out service. So, like, subscribe, leave us a comment below. Have a safe day out there. See you soon. Case closed.